Hello and welcome back to the Dash 2 podcast. I am your host, Logan, and today we're going to get into some things, some technical difficulties on the first recording. I'm first time trying to record video and audio at the same time, so I'm going to have to splice in our World Junior segment. It is going to sound like shit because I had to use my phone for the first time around, but I figured out how to use it for the second time around. And then I'm just going to cut my losses with the rest of the audio and start fresh. Just a couple news pieces to go over, and then we'll go over the rest of it. Um, I'll see you guys after the break. So the first thing that I want to get to is the Winter Classic. Obviously, Winter Classic was on Monday. It was a great event in Seattle. It was 45,000 people in T-Mobile Park. It was incredible. The whole atmosphere was great. Fans were electric. You can tell that they are really developing into a hockey market, which is great, especially with being a new franchise. Obviously, having the franchise battle between the two newest expansion teams was pretty sick. I didn't think I was going to like Vegas's jerseys as much as I did once I saw the full set. The full set on the ice was beautiful. Seattle's jerseys obviously are hard on and off the ice, especially Joey Decord's setup with the pads. That was absolutely disgusting. Um, the ship and like the Kraken shit that they had all over the ice, along with like the birds and the fish all over the ice, that was pretty sick. The only major miss I would say that the NHL had was they love to bring old bands that nobody gives a shit about anymore. They had Heart, who's known for being from the 70s, and they have Barracuda and Crazy on You as their songs. First intro song we've ever had, by the way, Crazy on You, great song. But I mean, it's not the 70s anymore. We're trying to grow the game. Obviously, the older fans probably loved it, but that's not the vibe for people my age, of course. And then they also had Sir Mix-a-Lot come in, which is another crazy move. I mean, if it was 1995, that would have been a banger if he came out with Baby Got Back and actually sang it. Instead, he made it about Vegas and Seattle, which is fucking weird. Like, just stick to what you're good at and just do the songs that everybody knows you for. I also thought it was kind of a major miss as well. Like, I know people hate Macklemore. I'm not the biggest Macklemore guy, but he's not garbage. It's probably better than Sir Mix-a-Lot and Hart. He's a part owner of the Seattle Kraken, so you would think that they would have put that together and asked him if he wanted to be the one to come in and perform. I think it probably would have been a better performance, at least, somebody with a pulse. And obviously, if you have a rapper, you're more likely to get kids to listen, even if it is Macklemore. People still do like Macklemore. It's just, it is a bad look. I won't lie. It is an awful look. So tough looks there by the NHL, but that's kind of always how they do it. They're just always a bit out of touch. Gary Bettman's just not very good with growing the game, and it doesn't seem like he's really too concerned with it. So hopefully one day we'll be a great league. Speaking of Gary Bettman, while at this event, he mentioned that there's going to be some upcoming news for a best on best tournament. Hopefully the World Cup of Hockey announcements coming soon. They've already hinted at 2026 for best on best with, Sweden, Finland, Canada, and the US, which isn't a true best on best tournament, but it'll do. I mean, it'll scratch my itch. I mean, hopefully teams can just play in the playoff or play in the Olympics instead. Excuse me. That would probably be a much better solution for all parties involved. But who knows? The NHL is weird because the IIHF doesn't pay them accordingly for the stuff that they do and lending the players out. And of course, like players can get injured and that fucks up teams' playoffs and that can fuck up league revenue. So it makes sense why they're a little bit weary to let players go over to the Olympics. But I mean, I don't know. For me, when I think the only real Olympic hockey that I got to watch 2010, 2014, the rest of them were kind of out of my reach as far as like waking up at 7, 6, 3, 4 a.m. to go watch a game. But at that point, like, US Canada gold medal game 2010, that game was electric. And then obviously the Team USA was a wagon that entire time. And then 2014, the US team wasn't as exciting with the TJ Oshie moment. And then obviously, like, the gold medal game for Canada was pretty sick too, because those teams were loaded at that point. Like, it's just one of those things where you get more eyes on it and people are more likely to watch it because it's like higher stakes. Like, if you're not a hockey fan, but you want to watch something fun for the Winter Olympics, like, there's nothing better than Olympic hockey, especially when like the pros are in it. It's like the same, like Olympic basketball is not the same because USA just kind of dominates. Although I will say in basketball, like countries like Canada and Australia and France are starting to pick it up, and Slovenia even, like, just global games grow through the Olympics and just expanding your brand. You can see that in the NBA, like Jokic, Doncic, like these guys in Europe, they grow up with the sport, they develop a love for the sport, and then they become like some of the best players in the world. And I know the NHL kind of is a global league as it is. Like, there's a bunch of players from Sweden, Finland, Russia, Czech, Slovakia, like all these places. But I mean, you're just gonna, by doing these best on best tournaments, like, you're gonna foster a love for the game from a youth standpoint. And it's just gonna further everything, really. I think it's probably the best move that the league can make. But I got completely on a tangent there. There'll be more IIHF talk after this segment with the World Juniors. So back to the Winter Classic. Vegas looked like shit. I think the Stanley Cup hangover is starting to hit right about now. They've played a lot of hockey so far this season. They've played like over half their games already, which, you know, a lot of teams have only played like 38 games. They've played 38 games in 2 months. And then on top of that, like all the playoff miles, and guys are starting to get injured. Like Shea Theodore's been out for a hot minute. Like Alec Martinez has been in and out of the lineup. So it's just one of those things that it's been a little bit hard for them. They've hit a tough patch in like Bruce Cassidy, obviously. Like, he's a great coach, so I'm sure he'll get him back on track. But that Winter Classic game was pretty ugly. Honestly, it was pretty boring. Also, like, Seattle scored goals, but they didn't score like pretty goals that are, you know, going to be something that you're going to see on social media for years to come. But what you will see for years to come is Joey Daccord with the first shutout in Winter Classic history. That was pretty wild. Local guy from North Andover. His dad is the BU goalie coach and is also known for having the Stop It goaltending school. One of my best friend's brother, he went there, and, you know, he's a good guy who likes to work with the kids. He offers like a full-blown goalie school, so you're doing online school and then you're doing on-ice sessions every day, so you can truly get better. He's one of the innovators of doing like VR for training on the ice as well. So that guy's a real visionary, and obviously, like, Joey is in the NHL, so he's a stud. But you can see, like, it's kind of like a family thing. Like, his dad is clearly a talented goalie coach, and it transferred over to his son. Joey had an interesting journey to the NHL. He played for Arizona State University before it was, you know, a real powerhouse in NCAA hockey. The year that they made the NCAA tournament for the first time, Joey was in the conversation for the Hobey Baker for good reason, because he was carrying them through a lot of games because he's a stud. After that season, they lost in, I think, the first round of the NCAA tournament. And then he signed an undrafted free agent deal with the Ottawa Senators, got to play a game in the league, played some playoffs in Binghamton. I don't know why I said Birmingham. And then he got picked up by Seattle in the draft. Seattle, at that point, you know, they picked up Driedger from the draft, and then they also got Grubauer. So not a lot of opportunity for him there. He goes to the AHL for the first year, kind of plays some NHL games, and then he carries them to a Calder Cup playoff run. Last year, he got a couple games with the NHL team, but he mostly played for the AHL team. They went Game 7 against the Hershey Bears in the Calder Cup, and then ultimately lost. And then this season, you know, Grubauer's been in and out of the lineup, and Driedger's not really a starter at this point. So they looked to Joey to see if they could kind of switch it up and pick up the pace for a team that's been struggling out of the gate. And obviously, he's come in. They've won eight of their last 10, which is impressive. And Joey's kind of carried them in most of the games. Like, he's making the big saves when he needs to. They played LA the other night. and he absolutely cooked in that game. He was a standout player for them. And honestly, when he is letting in goals, they're goals that like aren't really his fault. Like obviously the team defense isn't fully there. So shout out to him, local guy. Love to see that. And then we'll move on to the next thing here, which is the World Juniors. I'm going to switch it over here. I brought on Mike. We got video for the first time, so this will be on YouTube as well as audio. I will say my audio sucks from this for whatever reason. My phone was echoey as shit when I was recording it, so please excuse that. And then I will transfer over to that right now.
You spent the last 2 weeks being the world's biggest World Juniors fan, so we're gonna ask you some questions about what's going on, how you feel about it.
Dude, it's been so fun to watch, and it was like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people were kind of like turned off by it this year just because it's not like, oh my god, Bedard's in the World Juniors this year. He's gonna get drafted and go number 1. But it's still like super exciting. For Canada, I mean, Celebrini's fantastic, and he's fun
he was
to
playing
watch.
fourth line too.
Yeah, which is crazy. He's is he a freshman at BU?
Yeah.
So
I think he's only like 17 or 18, something like that.
Yeah, he's disgusting, but I mean, it's so fun to watch USA. They're just running through everyone.
Absolute wagon.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, right now, we're going into semifinals.
Semis, yep. Semis start tomorrow, or I don't even know if they have a day off in between.
I think they have a game off for the medal games because that's on Friday. Yeah. So I think semis will be tomorrow. I mean, obviously Sweden beat Switzerland today 3-2. Canada lost to Czech 3-2. USA pumped Latvia 7-2, and then Slovakia lost Finland 4-3.
I really wish Finland lost because Slovakia, they're nasty, and the Czechs are so good too. It's like exciting to watch these like countries that aren't historically like crazy World Juniors teams like come in here and beat like a powerhouse like Canada. And
especially those two countries because they used to be one country. The fact that they're like two separate ones now and are nasty is crazy.
Yeah. And we've seen so many like good people come out of, you know, both those countries, or even when they were one country together. Like, Pasta definitely played for the World Juniors. I
mean, Krejci. You got fucking Yager. They won the gold medal with Hasek. Czech did in like 2002. That's when USA won the silver medal on home ice, and then everybody cried about it. The Sakic is, or not Sakic, fucking Hasek is disgusting.
Yeah, but it's been really fun to watch. USA is just like insane. They have so many good players. I've been like extremely impressed with Gavin Brindley, St. Louis pick, right?
No, I think that's Snuggerud. I don't know who has Brindley.
No. I don't know. He's gross. Gautier, nasty. Will Smith has been showing up. Perreault has been super good. He just
got BC line. BC line's fucking gross. They have all that chem from college and they just carry it right over to international play.
Oh yeah. It's been electric. So USA, Finland in the semis, and then Sweden and Czechia in the semis.
Yeah.
I thought USA was gonna get Sweden, but I guess they were in different groups. I don't know why I thought they were in the same group. But
Canada and Sweden were fighting for the first spot in that Group A.
Okay. Yeah, but I honestly think USA will run over Finland too. They haven't been super impressive. And I
watched the Sweden game, the Finland-Sweden game. That entire game, like Sweden looked like they were ready to lose. They were playing scared that entire period. Third period where they tied it up and then won in the shootout.
Yeah, it just goes to show that like anyone can win on any given night. Just like watching Canada lose. It really just depends. You know, I feel like in this tournament that a lot of players are trying to like showcase themselves and trying to play well themselves to have like
higher draft stock
and a better opportunity to have a career playing hockey. So that can hurt you and that can also help you. I think more than not, it'll hurt you because like some of these players play pretty like individualistic styles just because they want to be the guy and they want to be a prospect and a draft pick. But I mean, to win a tournament like this, you need to play as a team. And I think USA struggled with that at first. Like, luckily, they haven't really ran into anybody besides that. Did they play Czechia or Slovakia?
I think it was Slovakia. Slovakia put up a fight.
Yeah, they did. And in that game, they were playing like a bunch of individuals. But I think they got the team game down. And, so many of those players have so much chemistry. So it's been really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, the Brindley kid is a Columbus pick. He's best friends with Adam Fantilli. So, yeah, they got that shit. So that's going to be on lock for a while for them. Michigan and Columbus are like best friends. They only drive Michigan boys. Crazy.
Yeah, but Brindley, he's 5'9", right-handed shot, but I mean that he's so fast and like flies through the neutral zone, head up, like toe dragging people at full speed. It's like insane how good this kid is.
Yeah, you start to wonder like at what point are GMs just going to start to realize that the size thing really doesn't matter. I mean, at this point we've got like Marty St. Louis is obviously like the prototype for that, but now like since then we've had Marshy, fucking Torrey Krug's a tiny boy.
Yeah.
And then like Cole Caulfield recently, like he slipped to like 15th overall. He's nasty. DeBrincat.
Yeah, I think
fucking second round pick.
Yeah, I think Panarin's under 6 feet too.
Yeah, it's like
he's disgusting.
You would think that after a certain point they just like bet on the talent and the point production. I mean, even Gaudreau was a 4th round pick, and like looking at that, you're like, I don't even understand how that's possible. Especially when you look at those Boston College seasons that he had, he was fucking gross.
Mm-hmm. And like, I mean, he's been shitting the bed on Columbus, but the Flames 100-point season, like,
and he was nasty with the Flames for like 5-6 years. He was so good. Anybody else you want to highlight from that? I mean, Wayne Hudson, obviously that's like my guy. He's just super talented offensive defenseman.
Yeah.
I think once he makes it to the NHL, he's definitely going to struggle with the defensive side of the puck just because he's so used to being able to do whatever he wants with defenses. But I have a feeling that he's going to end up working out in the long term.
Yeah, it also is like one thing you got to think about. Like, say I was a GM, like watching the World Juniors, like the level these kids compete at is like it varies a lot.
Yeah,
because like I think college hockey nowadays is probably the most competitive, hockey at draft pick or prospect play.
With some of the teams that are like playing Quinnipiac is playing a bunch of 25-year-old men.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's definitely completely different.
Juniors.
Yeah, the one thing that I do want to say though is like, as far as like Celebrini, like obviously he's the number 1 ranked forward right now. Cole Eiserman was left off the like USA team. He's playing for the U.S. national development team.
Mm-hmm.
Going into the year, people were kind of saying that it was like a 1A, 1B draft where it's going to be like either way you get a winner. But I mean, I wonder what the contributing factors is for leaving off a guy with like considerable talent. I mean, obviously, like all the guys on the USA team are playing in college, so that's probably a big factor. But you look back at like, remember Jack Hughes in the World Juniors tournament when he was like getting drafted? I mean, he was fucking gross. That's like that tournament, and then on top of that, like the amount of stock that you get from that, like Capo Caco was like a top 10 rated pick. Yep. And then it was a debate on if it was going to be Jack Hughes or Capo. So it's like, it makes you wonder why these guys got left off.
So that was our World Juniors breakdown. Again, sorry for the audio. It was pretty ugly, but I didn't want to scrap it because me and Mike had a good talk. And Mike clearly has been watching a lot of it. So he got a lot of information there. He was a very good source of info, especially for like breaking down prospects and shit like that. So that was pretty good. Thanks to Mike on that. I apologize. I had to cut the other 30 minutes that we did. I just couldn't handle editing that audio. It was too bad. Next up, Marc-Andre Fleury, 1,000 games. Pretty impressive milestone for a goaltender. He's the third goaltender of all time to do that, which is absolutely insane. Only two other goalies, Patrick Roy and Martin Brodeur. Brodeur is first, Roy is second, and then same thing in wins right now. Fleury is currently in third place for all-time wins with 1,050. Obviously, he's going to be overtaking Patrick Roy pretty soon. Patrick Roy's record is 1,051. And so he should be passing that. Hopefully, I pray to God he passes it because that would be really embarrassing this year. Martin Brodeur, 691 wins. Nobody's sniffing that. Same with games played. He has 1,266. That's what happens when you play to your 40s and you're on a nasty team for 20 years and then get traded to the Blues in one of your last years for no reason. But anyways, Fleury, very interesting career. We're going to kind of do a little deep dive here. Drafted by the Penguins first overall in 2003, the greatest draft of all time. Fleury obviously is a goaltender, so it takes a little bit more time to develop from there. So he spends a couple years in the AHL. His rookie year is in 2005 with Sid. So the Penguins tank for 3 years straight. They get Marc-Andre Fleury. They get Evgeny Malkin the next year with the second pick. They were this close to getting Ovechkin. And then the following year, they tank for Sid. It works out. They grab him. The savior of the franchise is there. Mario Lemieux gets to play with Sid for the first year. And, Pittsburgh's a little bit closer to the goals that they need. Next year, they make the big jump as far as being like a contender. So we're at 2007 now. And then obviously 2008, they make the Stanley Cup Finals. And then 2009, they win the Cup. Fleury was an absolute monster during this time. He was great. Obviously, he kind of won them Game 7 in 2009. So that's mostly like the feather in his cap, I would say, as far as for his career. The following years, he was pretty good. But 2013, he kind of hit a rough patch. If you guys remember, I know for me, I do. That was the year that the Bruins and the Penguins met in the Eastern Conference Finals. At that point, like Fleury had been shitting the bed in the playoffs, and he wasn't starting. He lost his job to Thomas Vokoun, who was an aging vet at that point. So a bit of a tough move at that point in his career. And he then moved on. After that, he gets a starting role back. He's the starter for a few years. Penguins struggle. They're making the playoffs, but they're not doing well. And then 2016 happens, 2016-17. He loses the net to Matt Murray, and then Matt Murray carries them or helps them to win a Stanley Cup in 2016. And then the following year, in 2017, Matt Murray does it again, except with a little help from Fleury in the playoffs because Murray struggled a bit. But, at that point, you're starting to think, like, can we do the Fleury-Murray thing, especially with the expansion draft coming up, like Vegas is coming in. Obviously, we know now Pittsburgh lets Fleury walk to Vegas. And once he gets there, he puts in an absolute clinic, like all-time, fuck you, you shouldn't have let me go season. He comes in, he cooks, and helps them along to a 2019-2018 Stanley Cup run against the Capitals. Obviously, they lost, but it let everybody know that Fleury is still a candidate to win and a very good goalie. The next year, he plays for the Vegas. He wins the Vezina. And then that offseason, he gets shipped off to Chicago for spare parts, basically. I think it was a 5th-round pick. And then, obviously, again, he gets traded to Minnesota in season because Chicago was a bad team. So pretty crazy career as far as you look at it, especially like Minnesota, obviously, is a good team, but they're not the best team. They've been on the bubble for playoffs. They haven't been playing too great. So very crazy career for Flower. As far as like goalies all time, I put him on like late 10s because it's the inconsistency that you have to worry about. Was he a great player? Yes. Did he win a lot of games? Yes. But I mean, you look at the issues where, he wasn't as reliable in the playoffs and couldn't always be there for the big games, the big wins. It's one of those things that you kind of have to look at and put in perspective, like, especially for the Penguins. Like, if you look back at the last, I don't know, at this point, it's 20 years. It's like a 20-year run. They picked Flower 20 years ago. So looking back at it, could they have got more? Probably could have won 2008. That was a coin toss between Detroit and Pittsburgh in 2008. Obviously, they lost. Next year, they run it back. They win. Crosby, a couple different bounces. He doesn't get as many concussion injuries and all those issues that he had from that, which put a real, I don't know, dark cloud on his career for a couple years. Like, if you think about it, if he played as many games as like Ovechkin did, Ovechkin hasn't had almost any issues with injury throughout his career. Sid would probably be like a 1,500 point player at this point because he missed like 3 of the prime years of his career with concussion injuries. So that, and then, obviously Gino would still be there, Letang, Kunitz, all these guys that helped them win those cups and develop as a team, like James Neal when he was still around before he got shipped off to the Preds for Patrick Hornquist. They definitely could have won more cups. I think if you probably 2013, they probably should have made it to the cup final, and they probably would have gave the Hawks a run for their money. I know the Bruins team was loaded and they were a wagon that year, but I think if Tuukka doesn't get as hot as he does in that series, they probably go on, and it's probably a Game 7 series with the Hawks. And then as well as like looking back to like 2015, 2014. And then if they keep Fleury, they probably win in 2018 against the Capitals because, I mean, it was just a wagon at that point. It's crazy to think where the Penguins are right now with all the issues that they're having when they've had such a long run of success. So I feel for the Pittsburgh fans. I know for me as a Bruins fan, just having 1 cup stings. For you having 3, I'm like, you kind of need to shut the fuck up. But at the same time, like, you could have had more. You definitely could have had more. So sorry, Pittsburgh. And Fleury, as I say with my top 10 goalies thing, like, if it's coming to I need somebody to win me a game or compete in a game, I don't think he's in my top 10, in all honesty. I would say, obviously, the big 3 is Brodeur, Waugh, Hasek. Then I would argue, prime Jonathan Quick in those Stanley Cup final runs. That guy was a horse. You got Mike Richter from the 90s for the Rangers. Fucking the Oilers goalie, I can't think of his name right now. Hank, Tuukka, Tim Thomas. Tim Thomas in that 2011 run, I don't think anybody's going to be better than that. Vasi right now, Shesterkin right now. Like, I would argue that those guys are more apt to win you a game than Fleury, and I think that their resumes speak towards that as well. Obviously, not the newer guys, like Shesty hasn't been around enough to prove that, but in due time, I'm sure he will. I'm going to talk about some teams now. Well, mostly just one. The New York Islanders confuse the shit out of me. I'm lost. I don't get it. They're stuck in no man's land. They're currently 11th in the league rank-wise. That's good for second in the Metro. The Metro is also weird, like if Flyers, Capitals, and the Islanders. Who would have thought before the season? Definitely not me. I didn't have any of those teams in the playoffs, so they're sticking it to me. If you look back at my prediction podcast, I'm a fucking idiot. I don't know shit about fuck, okay? It's a hard league. Every team's good. There's enough players in the league that are good that you really don't know. That's why betting the sport sucks. I don't know who's going to fucking win. I read stats all day. I read stories. I look at back-to-backs. I can't fucking pick a winner for the life of me. It doesn't matter what I do. So I just gave up. It's an impossible sport, and predicting it is impossible because it's unpredictable. It's the same thing like looking at the playoffs last year. Like, Kraken beat the Avs. Who would have thought that? Bruins lose in the first round. Who would have thought that? the Lightning get beat by the Leafs when they've outplayed them the entire series. That was fucking crazy. So it's a bullshit sport that you can't bet. The Islanders, though, I would love to bet against all the time because they don't make any sense. They had one of the worst displays I've ever seen in my life with a 6-goal second period. They allowed 6 goals in the second period to the Penguins, lost 7-0, and looked like shit the entire time. Then they come back, they win a game against Carolina, and then they play the Penguins again, and they lose 3-1. And then they played the Avs the other night. They go up, they get a 4-2 lead in the third, choke a penalty, power play goal, Colorado, get another penalty, or that was the winner. So another goal given up, and then they get another shitty penalty, and then Nate Dogg has an absolute piss missile to the top of the net, and then they win the game. So the team on the ice is just inconsistent, and obviously they let up Devin Taves, and he went to Colorado for a 3rd-round pick, which is something that they're going to shoot themselves. They're going to like look back on and be like, what the fuck is wrong with us? Because it was very obvious that Taves was good. I don't think anybody knew he was going to end up being as good as he is now, and I think Makar is a big part of that. But you lose a legit top pairing defenseman for a 3rd-round pick, and then you do nothing with it. And I think that that's kind of the epitome of the Lou Lamoriello experience on the island. You don't really know what you're getting with him, especially because he's a bit older. So it's kind of more hard to see what he wants, especially like you're looking at it. They're not making moves until like August or like late July during these off seasons. So it's almost like he's falling asleep at the wheel. Like he's not even interested in trying to get more players in for the team to be more successful. It seems like his MO is just like grinding 3rd-line guys and then bringing in an aging vet who used to be a top 6 player. That's how you get Kyle Palmieri and Zach Parise and fucking JG Pajot and Pierre Engvall. Like these guys are all signed long-term to this team, and they're all on the wrong side of 30. Pierre Engvall is 28, but I mean, he plays a 3rd-line style. I don't know how long you're going to get production out of him. And then obviously the bigger guys aren't that great either. Like Brock Nelson's getting older. Anders Lee is getting older. He's slowing down. Matt Barzell is still cooking, but I like Bo Horvat, who they traded for, which is their best move that they've made in fucking years. And even then you look at it and you're like, it's like the Canucks kind of made out because they kept JT Miller. They gave up Bo, and Bo, he's a good player. And last year he did great because Pettersson was so good. But I mean, he hasn't had the same pop that he had in Vancouver. So even with the win, they still kind of lose a little bit. Beauvillier was a nothing asset because the Canucks flipped him to the Hawks for like a 4th-round pick. So that was kind of nothing, but those picks that they sent along to go with Beauvillier over to Vancouver. And they gave up Atu Ratti, who is a wild prospect who is supposed to be a 1st overall pick, like top 3 guy 2 years ago, and just never amounted to anything. So kind of gave up on him a little early, especially for someone with that level of pedigree. Like he could end up working on the NHL. I guess only time will tell. And Vancouver's a good spot to develop prospects. They're a system that they have in place is pretty decent. So I remember the Monarchs playing up here, like the Utica Comets at that point, where they had Jacob Markstrom, and they had like a lot of good young players, and they were a tough team to play against. The Monarchs ended up winning the Calder Cup against Utica, but I remember them as being like a powerhouse, and they were always pretty decent teams as far as like AHL teams go, because it's kind of a shit show. Like some teams' prospect pools suck, and they don't focus on like putting in good vets on the AHL teams to kind of develop good habits. I know the Monarchs team kind of prioritized that towards the end, and I definitely know that Providence does with the Bruins. They do that a lot. And then Hershey as well for Washington. The Hershey Bears are like an institution in the AHL, and they always try and have a contending team just because it's good for the franchise. Like you want to have players come in and win games, and if they're not ready for the big club, you might as well win in the AHL and invest in like vets that can come in. And proven commodities in the AHL are kind of hard to come by because guys come in, they go, and then they go overseas to get paid more. So big digression from the topic, but the Islanders, you just gotta pick a path. I need you to not be middle of the road. I don't want you to be the Flyers of the 2020s. I want you to, it's now 2024, like we're almost at the halfway point, which is fucking scary. But you don't want to be that team that's sitting on like 13th overall picks, 14th overall picks. You need the superstar to build your team around. I was talking about this last week with Montreal. You need a guy that you can put like jerseys on the shelves and sell them. That's what you need. That's what you want. So hopefully that can happen for them and they can just choose to be bad, sell at the deadline or in the offseason, because this year they're going to make the playoffs, sell in the offseason, get it started for real this time, a real rebuild, and start from the ground up. Get rid of Lou. I can't have an 81-year-old male in this league. It's fucking crazy. It doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it. Now I'm going to go to some trade deadline talk. Do they sell? We're going to go over 4 teams, one from each division, where they're in a spot where you're not really sure what they're going to do because they're in contention, but not at the same time. First up, the Atlantic Division, the Detroit Red Wings. You got Patrick Kane. He picked you. I don't know if it's probably unwise to trade him at the trade deadline unless he specifically asks for it, but he said that he wants to go to a contender and he wants to compete for a Stanley Cup. He's not doing that, Detroit. Detroit's been incredibly inconsistent. His play has been great. He's been a point per game player since he's come into the lineup, and he's been cooking. Obviously, he wants to make the playoffs, like I said. And he's only making $2.75 million, so probably the easiest contract for you to move and get assets back. I know Stevie Y, you can't really do it because it's bad will with a new free agent. Like, you don't want to foster that idea out there on the market that you're willing to flip assets as soon as they come in. But it's a former Hart winner. He's now 2 seasons removed from a 100-point season. He's point per game this season. Any contending team would love to pick up Patrick Kane for first-round picks, second-round picks, prospects. They don't give a shit. If you can add a guy like that into your lineup, and especially like those jerseys are going to fucking move. Any jersey that I want to get a Wings jersey just because they're so hard. Like that 88 looks so crisp, and especially like he's just an iconic American player. So coming to any American market and being able to sell a Patrick Kane jersey is going to be fucking huge. Especially like people my age, like we looked up to Patrick Kane. He was winning cups by the time we were 10 and then was one of the best players in the decade of 2010s. So he's one of those guys that's like when I think of hockey, he's who I think of. The playoff moments with the heartbreaker, all those OT winners, the playoff mullet, like he is hockey to me. Like that's what I think of when I think of like a playoff performer. It's Showtime. Like nothing's better than him. So any team would be horny to get him, and there's a couple expiring contracts on the Red Wings that they can offload as well. So fuck it. I mean, you're a couple points back. There's like 5 teams within a point of each other in the East for a wild card spot because the Metro's been such a shit show. So it's one of those things where it's like you should look for it. The Metro is too close for me to pick a team. Ottawa, I would say you can look for them to move like Vlad Tarasenko, another proven vet with playoff experience. He moved at the last year's trade deadline. They got a bunch of players on that team and they still can't figure it out. So it wouldn't surprise me if they move some guys out, like maybe vets like Travis Hamonic goes. I don't know. As far as like Claude Giroux would be a big splash, but he's still a good player and like an older voice in that locker room, which they clearly need because they haven't figured it out yet. I don't know. There's a lot of guys on that team and they haven't been performing, so that's a possibility. We're gonna go over to the Central, St. Louis. I think it's time to just give it up. If you can move away from Torrey Krug, which you wanted to do in the offseason, there was a trade in place for him to go to Philadelphia, but he utilized his no move clause and did not go. I think that's fair. You know, if you earn the no move clause, you might as well use it. But Torrey Krug makes $6 million a year. They kind of already have Torrey Krug in Justin Falk. they're the same kind of player, except Krug's a little bit smaller. So if you can get off of him and bring in some assets, that would be nice. As far as like anybody else on this team, like you just need to bottom out and get worse. Binnington, if there was ever a time to sell high on him, like every team in the league needs a guy. He's making $5 million a year. If you could do like a not Stuart Skinner, Campbell swap with Edmonton and get like first round picks back, that would be huge. And then everybody else can suffer with Binnington because he's the most insufferable player in the league by far. You get him far away from your fan base. And, maybe you just start the rebuild now because the Blues are not going to be able to sustain being good. They have Jimmy Snuggerud in the pipeline, who's been very good for Team USA and the World Juniors tournament. And he's also been very good for Minnesota this year and last year, playing with Cooley and Nyes. And you can see how those guys are doing in the NHL right now. So you can imagine how that's going to go once he gets into the league. But the Blues lack a future stud down the middle of the ice. And they also lack like the quintessential D-man since they let Petro go, which was one of the worst moves they've ever made. So I think it might be time to bottom out and just give up. Lastly, Calgary, obviously, I've talked about it a million times this season. All the expirings need to go. Dubé, Tanev, Lindholm, fucking handsome dude, Noah Hannafin. They all got to go. You got to get as many assets as you can. And just see what you can get and kind of jumpstart the rebuild because there's a lot of guys here like Huberdeau is too old and making too much money and not producing at all. Uyghur just signed a fat extension and he's been doing pretty good, but if the team's struggling, he's probably going to stay there just because of the money. Kadri as well. He's got a fat payday and he's going to end up staying there. But lots of things to look at as far as like trade deadline stuff. I'm very excited to go forward. I am a 30-time Stanley Cup winning champion in franchise mode. That's probably underselling it as to how much I play franchise mode, but I love trades. I think it's so fun. Sometimes if I'm real bored, I get on Cap Friendly and I cook up a trade for myself just to see if I can make it work. I'm convinced if you gave me an NHL team, I could probably win a Stanley Cup within 10 years. But obviously, it's much harder than it seems because I can do it in a video game. I must be able to do it in real life, right? But that's all I got. Quick episode. Should be right around like 50 minutes or so. I'm trying to get them shorter. I'm doing the video shit now. So we're going to be on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, obviously podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I'll have the video up. That'll be edited. And then I'll pump out some clips. I got some hats for the brand. If you're watching the video, they're very nice, very cool. Nice trucker hats. I'll be selling those for like $20, I guess. I got 30 of these bad boys. So if somebody wants them, let me know. If you make it this far into the video, I might as well give it to you for free because I seriously doubt that most people do. But thanks for listening if you are, and we will see you next week for another episode. Thanks.